That, guys, is an absolute banger. I love it. Absolutely love it. That is our new intro here for our podcast. But welcome back, everyone, to Talking Devils podcast, your number one independent Manchester United podcast. I am joined today by former Manchester United player Phil Marsh. We're here today to talk all things Manchester United. We're going to talk about the Villa and Brentford games. We're also going to talk about West Ham coming up this weekend. Also, we're going to chat about Ralf Rangnick's style and how this may be adapted in these last 2 weeks. Looks like some of these players are adapting to the style. So we're going to chat about all that tonight and much, much more. So don't forget, guys, do smash the like in the video. Hit that subscribe button as well. We do have a lot of interesting content coming up in these next couple of weeks. And look, we're packed out with fixtures as well. So look, we will have a lot to talk about in these next coming weeks and months. But Phil, first of all, haven't talked in the week. We've obviously had 2 games of football since then. A lot's kind of happened with Manchester United and so on and so forth. But first of all, how are you today anyway?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, mate. Had a good week in work and looking forward to getting back to playing myself. Obviously, not had a game for a couple of weeks with postponements and just not having a fixture. So, looking forward to playing myself again tomorrow. But yeah, everything's good from my end, mate.
That's good. It's good. And look, it's always good to be back playing ball, though, especially when there's a break there. You almost feel like you're lost without it. So yeah, I can absolutely do understand how you're feeling in that regard. But look, Phil, myself, you and Lee had a very long podcast last week, 1 hour and 44 minutes show, where we discussed a lot about Manchester United in terms of how we're playing, how the system is working, how some of these players seem to be not adapting, and it hasn't been good enough in these kind of last couple of weeks. We've had 2 games in this last 7 days. Obviously, we've had Villa away from home, 2-2 draw, and then we've had obviously a 3-1 win against Brentford in the Premier League away from home also. Now, obviously, 7 days have passed from the conversation we've had, and you look at the 2 kind of performances we had over the 180 minutes in them 2 games. What's your overall assessment on kind of how we played in them 2 games? Firstly, Villa, and kind of how the performances have kind of gradually improved in this last week.
Yeah, so I think if you look at the 2 games, obviously, I think it pretty much sums up Manchester United in a nutshell of how things have been going of late. I think obviously, if we touch on the Villa game first, I think first half they was really good. I thought they controlled the game. They looked a lot more organised and played some really good football. And then, in contrast, I think if you look to the Brentford game, I think first half we was, as bad as I've seen us in a long while. And then, second half we was really good. So I think that just shows obviously the inconsistencies and sort of the level and where we're at the moment. There's no real sort of continuity in the performances. But obviously showing some good signs as well. I think, the Villa game that we was really good for that first half and obviously scored 2 really good goals. Bruno, obviously the first was a mistake by Martinez, but a nicely worked free kick, something inventive, which you want to see. And your players, you want to try something different, maybe to, create something. And I think that was, what we did for that first goal, although the keeper, would save that 99 times out of 100. I think, that little bit of invention and something different is what we need, because obviously it's well documented. We've struggled on set pieces and we haven't scored a goal in, however many. And I think sometimes when that is the case, you need to maybe do something different and try and, break the mold. And I think for us, that was a good way to sort of get us going. And I think it was a good solid first half performance. However, I think in the second half, when we went 2-0 up, I think that was a massive sort of chance for us to see a game out and win that game 2-0, where I think it just highlighted again how many characters and leaders that we lack in that team, because seeing a game out away from home when, you're sort of under the cosh a little bit is where titles are won and lost, and to drop 2 points there against Aston Villa, who are a very good side, don't get me wrong, and they brought Coutinho on and they have got some good players. But for me, I think that's the type of game really where you should be seeing that out and managing the game a lot better. with the players we've got and sort of the experience we've got, that shouldn't have happened where we've let a 2-0 lead slip and end up drawing, and maybe could have even lost if we'd have been playing for an extra 5 or 10 minutes. I think Villa's tails were up and we'd pretty much gone by that point. So obviously something to learn from, and there's always things you can improve on, but I feel as though that really was sort of where we are as a team at this moment in time, with being inconsistent and not being able to fully see a game out. Whereas it was the opposite way around really in the Brentford game. I think we started off really poor, sloppy on the ball, didn't create anything really of any note in that first half. Brentford on the front foot, winning second balls, had 3 or 4 good opportunities. Obviously De Gea again was magnificent. He's been brilliant in certainly last 5 or 6 months for us. I think he's kept us in games at big moments, and I feel as though if they'd have gone 1 or 2-0 up in that first half, it could have been a completely different game. Whereas going in at 0-0 and still being in the game, although we created nothing and couldn't really get any worse. Second half we came out and it was miles better. Lots more positives to sort of pick up on, and good to see the 3 goal scorers obviously coming from the academy. Alanga with a great finish. I think the touch was magnificent. A great ball from Fred. He's not really renowned for them eye the needle passes, but I think in the last couple of weeks he's produced some really good moments. The cross at Villa, at Old Trafford for McTominay's header, and then that ball for Alanga. I think the 2 real quality moments from Fred, and he deserves a little bit more credit for sort of them moments. But yeah, I mean, second half, great performance, some really good goals. Good to see Rashford on the score sheet as well. Obviously he's had a bit of a bad couple of weeks. His performances have been nowhere near good enough, and his confidence looks shot. But that'll do sort of him the world of good to get on the score sheet and get 3 points, and hopefully we know what he's capable of. He's really frustrating, Marcus, as a player from my perspective. I think he's got all the attributes to be a world-class player. I think sometimes his decision making, and obviously some of the games where you think why don't you do more of what we know you can do, it's just really frustrating. But hopefully whatever he's been going through, he can put that behind him now, look at the positives from obviously scoring that goal and sort of coming on and having an impact. And that's inevitably what we've got to try and do now. We've got to just try and take all the positives that we can as a group, keep improving. Obviously there's lots and lots we can still get better at and work on. And I think for me, the next step now is, we've played well in 45 minutes against Aston Villa and 45 minutes against Brentford. Now can we play well for 90 minutes against West Ham and put in a solid performance and see where that takes us? I think at the moment we're sort of not really showing a complete performance. We're doing little spurts and ups and downs, and there's too many sort of grey areas within the squad, which inevitably, if you're playing against better teams, I think Brentford there the other day is prime example. If you're playing against the City there or a Liverpool or someone, you're going in probably 3 or 4-0 down at half time, and then the game's over. So I think that's where we just need to learn and look at them games and try and start the game a little bit faster and keep that momentum going throughout the full game.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with regards to the both games. I think, again, both games were a tale of 2 halves. Like against Villa, the first 45 minutes, we really controlled the game, and you can see when Rangnick had us playing in the 4-3-3, retaining possession, we were much better. Now, obviously, I think the second half, we're conceding goals. I think a lot of that went down to Nemanja Matic just being knackered. He was absolutely shot after 60 minutes, and then that's when you've seen Villa's obviously fitness and energy in midfield really took over. And that's when, we were losing the second balls. I think we really could have done with Scott McTominay against Villa in that second half, because we needed his physicality and energy in there, and his aggressiveness in midfield. Because I think obviously Matic was doing well in the first half against Villa. He was picking out passes, he was breaking up play. But in some of these high intensity games, after 60, 70 minutes, his legs go. So, like, obviously, look, McTominay wasn't available due to his suspension. So, obviously, like, look, it wasn't a case Rangnick didn't pick him. It was a case that he just wasn't there due to being suspended. But, like, it is one of these things where we haven't played well over 90 minutes under him. But I'm starting to see now kind of what we're doing, in terms of what he wants us to do, in terms of controlling games, in terms of pressing from the front. I think we've seen in these last 2 games why he's picked Anthony Elanga in with regards to it, because he's someone who I think mirrors kind of what the manager wants in terms of pressing from the front, high energy, never giving up type of player, always trying something. Now, for the first 45 minutes, I thought Elanga was a bit bullied probably in the first half by the Brentford right full, though he's kicking him, he was out, though he was blown over the sideline or whatever. But every time Elanga got the ball, he went at him. And, I think, again, it was one of these things where it was like watching the way Rashford was when he first came through, in terms of kept running at a player, kept trying to take him on, kept trying to beat him and get a shot off early. So, like, for me, I look at these 2 games, I'm like, yes, I can see where the progression is in terms of what he can do and how his formation can work. Only thing I suppose I look at it and say, we still don't have the bodies in midfield to probably adapt this formation, because the 4-3-3 is good and you're hitting it on the head, Phil. In terms of some of the times we lost possession of the ball and got caught in the counter, so that was against City, Liverpool, Chelsea. I'd even go as far as say West Ham, because they have very good finishers up front. If we play like that, like, we're going to get caught. Like, but I think the back 4, I think Dalot played fantastically well against Brentford. I think against Villa he was actually okay as well. In that regard, like, I think if you look at some of these players, they're almost like, I think some of them are starting to come into a bit of form. It's just, again, as I said, sustained over 90 minutes. We have, I think, apart from Leeds this season, have we sustained a performance over 90 minutes? I don't think we have, really, over a space of 90 minutes. So it's tough. It's going to come to a couple of comments just before we proceed. Reese says here, never doubt a German. Best advice I can give. Absolutely. Look at the German managers in the Premier League. They all do quite well. So I would not doubt the Germans. Absolutely not. And Billy says Villa was just really bad defending and lack of concentration. Yeah, I think I can agree with that to a certain degree. Definitely lack of concentration for the Coutinho goal. But also I think there was a few tired legs in midfield, because again, they're not used to controlling games. They're kind of used to playing on the kind of back foot, sit back and soak up pressure, hit on the counter attack. That's what they've done under Solskjaer. I think if you look at this team's not used to keeping possession, retaining possession, those sustained attacks, they'll counter pressing. They're not used to doing this yet. And that's where you've seen this, probably why under Rangnick we're not sustaining a 90-minute performance, because they're not probably their fitness levels probably aren't acclimatized to what Rangnick wants. And Reese also says here as well, he says, fun fact, since Ralf came in, only Manchester City have picked up more points. That's a dangerous Stafford league. This manager would get us places for the short and long term. Phil, a lot was made, obviously, of this recent run that we've been on. And Reese, with the statistic Reese has just brought up there, that Man City have only picked up more points than us since Ralf Rangnick has come in. Where are you looking at this now? Because obviously we have West Ham tomorrow, and we'll discuss that game kind of in further detail later on in the show. But when you look at these kind of last couple of weeks, obviously we discussed kind of the players' attitudes and some of the stuff they've been leaking in the press, and kind of how certain players have down tools in the Manchester United shirt, and kind of how I suppose we've struggled in certain areas. But I actually didn't think that I didn't think that was actually that good in terms of points picked up. Where do you look at this now? Where do you think we can kind of improve now? Because how do we get like to a stage of performing over 90 minutes? Like, how do we get to that stage of sustaining these performances over that period? How can we make that possible with the current group of players that we do have?
Yeah, surprised actually at that Reese's little stat there, because I was sort of, thinking that, yeah, we have done okay, but I wouldn't have thought that, we would have been the next best team after City. So pleasantly surprised at that. But I wouldn't sort of get carried away with that, because for me, I think, you know, the performance hasn't been nowhere near as good as what you need to sort of be in that top four at the moment. Because when you look at other teams who are in and around that at the moment, I think they're playing a lot better than us over 90 minutes. Yeah, when we've played well in the 45-minute spells, then we're more than capable of, you know, being in the top four, and that's not an issue. I just think, as I said before, like the Brentford game, if you're playing against a top side there in that first half, the game's dead and buried at half time. You know, so we need to start games faster, start games with more intensity, have more quality going forward. I don't think we created a chance in that first half against Brentford, not that I can remember anyway. So yeah, it's gonna be difficult. I just feel as though at the moment now, Ralf needs to sort of try and work out his best 11 for who he trusts and who he believes is going to be the team that's going to move forward to sort of getting results. And I just think he needs to stick with that. And as we've touched on before, I think when you're looking at building up relationships and having a settled 11, I think that's when ideally you're going to start having more consistent performances, because you're getting, you know, relationship with the player you're playing at the side of, and you sort of know what they want and what you want from your game. And for me now, I think obviously you touched on Dallo there. I thought he's been really good at, for me, he should be keeping his place. I think he gives us a lot more of a threat going forward. And you know, defensively, I think we've been a lot more solid. We've not conceded as many goals. So he should be given that opportunity. I thought McTominay the other day was fantastic. Probably our best player. Oh, well, he definitely was our best player. The energy and some of the quality that he showed was really good. So for me, he needs to be playing sort of as much as possible, because I think out of the midfield at the minute, he's probably our best. Who can?
I think he's been the best player under Ralf so far. Like if you look at everyone performing, Dallo's been very good under Ralf as well. But if you look at the overall consistent performers, probably under Ralf since he's come in, I think McTominay has been our best player. Now that might upset a few people that I'm saying that, but it's the truth. I think McTominay has been the most consistent. He's been scoring goals, getting assists. Like that breakup play for the goal against Brentford, he bossed out midfield in the second half. He looked like a proper midfield general. And I think with this formation that Ralf is doing now, like he has us playing a 4-3-3, obviously a 4-1-4-1 when we're off the ball. I think McTominay can be essential in that. Now, like the one thing I'd always say about McTominay is he's done very well under Jose and Solskjaer in terms of playing in different positions, in terms of playing as part of midfield too, as two holders. Under Mourinho, he played a couple of times as a centre-back. He's relied on there. Mourinho often played him higher up the pitch too. For Scotland, he plays as part of a back three. I think one thing McTominay hasn't had yet is a settled position. And I think if Ralf can, if he can mould McTominay into a 6, I think that could maybe save us a couple of problems in the summer, though, in terms of maybe we don't have to buy 3 midfielders, maybe we only need to buy 2, that way. Because I think one thing McTominay's probably lacked in the last couple of years is elite coaching, like from a coach at the highest level. And Ralf Rangnick is well renowned for making players better. So, like, I think if he can continue playing in that 6 role under Ralf, I think it saves us about 50, 60 million in the summer. It really does. And if he can continue this form and he can get better, the one thing I'd just like to see from McTominay, if he's going to continue in this role, for me, is not shy away from looking for the ball. Because I think sometimes he's a bit guilty of that sometimes, where the centre-back gets the ball and he drops in behind the midfield player and doesn't come in to take the ball in the hole, doing that way. So, like, for me, I think McTominay could develop that part of his game. I think Ralf Rangnick could definitely help with that. Or look, again, as I always say, the prospective new manager that comes in with, let's say if it's a Pochettino or Ten Hag, to managers who like playing with possession of the ball, maybe they can get him out of that habit and then he can be that 6, because he has the height, he has the strength. He's very press resistant as well. So I think Scott McTominay can definitely be molded into that role. And look, again, it saves us replacing a Matic. Do you know what I mean? McTominay can be that replacement, and we can look for more of a box-to-box player. because obviously Mr. Pogba may be leaving in the summer. But I agree with Dan here. He says, I'd be surprised if Ralph doesn't stick with the same team. Lindelof out, obviously. Yeah, we're going to touch on that in a moment with regards to why Victor Lindelof is going to be out. But yeah, I think Ronaldo actually might be out as well, because Ralph did say he sustained a neck injury in that game against Brentford, and he's a doubt for tomorrow. So look, we'll wait and see. We'll get to our starting 11s and stuff like that kind of on the show later on. But obviously, like Dan just mentioned there, Victor Lindelof's actually been one of our better players, not just only under Ralph, but under Solskjaer as well. Obviously, a similar situations have to happen to him. What happened to Angel Di Maria a couple of years ago when he was at the Manchester as a Manchester United player? His house was recently burgled, and Ralf Rangnick has come out today and said that Victor Lindelof has just requested some time off. Obviously, tomorrow's game. I don't know how much longer really, but he's not going to be out. He's not going to be playing tomorrow due to the fact that obviously that incident has happened at his home. What are your thoughts just with regards to the situation? Because this is not the first, though, I suppose, incident of a Manchester United's player's family been targeted, and obviously, look, it's not right.
No, I mean, the thing is, you're never going to be able to change that. There's always people who's going to be out there looking to, take any chance that they can. And obviously, when you see, famous players who've got a lot of money and, big houses and stuff, then, they're going to be the targets of a lot of these people who just, absolute idiots and scum of the earth, really. I mean, but again, it's something that, happens quite often, not just to footballers, to a lot of people. And I feel for him because he's obviously had a lot of injury problems. He's been stop-start for quite a while, and now this has happened. And I think, as you said, when he has played, he has been one of our better players, if not our best centre half, really. So
yeah, he's been our best centre half this season. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So it's obviously disappointing, and this was part of the problem, which I was just trying to allude to about getting a starting 11 and having that run of games together. I think this has been part of the problem all season. There's been lads, injuries. There's been COVID. There's been suspensions, and we're having to chop and change quite a lot, which is obviously you've got the big squads and you need players who are good enough to step in when called upon, but for me, when you sort of look back to when we was invincible and had the best team on the planet, the team basically picked itself, and the players knew all the jobs. They had them the chemistry with each other. Everybody knew what was going on, and I think that's part of a problem at the moment, especially at Manchester United. The amount of people and personnel change and all this kind of thing isn't helping. And obviously, the lads who are coming in haven't probably been playing as much as they should be, so they're taking a couple of games to get up to speed. And you can't afford to sort of carry players in Premier League football. It just doesn't bode well, and I think that's why it's showing that we're playing well for certain parts of a game and not for a full 90 minutes, because all the players aren't probably up to speed. All the players aren't on the same wavelength, and that's obviously showing in performances and results. So I think obviously Ralph needs to just try and focus on an 11 which he wants to go forward with. Obviously, things that you can't plan for injuries and everything else. Obviously, Lindelof getting broke, you can't obviously foresee that kind of thing happening. But he obviously just needs to try and stick with the core of the players who he trusts and believes he can sort of go forward and get the best performances out of, and just try and stick with that as long as he can, and just see where it takes us. Because as I say, we are obviously a fair few players short of being a really, really top side again. The transfer window probably at the end of this season is going to be interesting to see who goes and who stays and what kind of players he identifies as coming in to, try and make us a better side. But I think the likes of Alanga and people like that have been, a breath of fresh air coming in, showing the right attitude, and just, being a sort of somebody who's just gonna, what you're gonna get out of them. Yeah, they're gonna be raw, they're gonna make mistakes, they're not gonna do everything right, but he's gonna work it, his socks off, he's gonna put a shift in, and he's definitely got the quality. So the more games he plays, then that's only going to do us good and do him good, because I think he's going to keep improving, learning, gaining that match experience, and he'll obviously be one for the future. But for me, he deserves his place at this moment in time right now. So yeah, that's just how I feel that we've got to go with sort of moving forward this season.
Definitely, I think one thing I think we do need is players who can adapt to the system, because I think one thing Ralf Rangnick has done with these last couple of weeks is experiment the systems. But I think he's set on the 4-3-3 now, which I think, to be fair, probably suits us the best, because it's kind of similar to what we were doing under Solskjaer. Obviously, he was 4-2-3-1. This formation kind of has that same principle. So obviously 4-3-3 gives you kind of more control. And Reese, like, I'll come to a couple of comments here just before we kind of go into the next talking point with regards to this, because Reese says here that he thinks the international break is going to be a blessing for Manchester United, because more work can be done with the manager to build and sustain fitness and controlling games. Yeah, well, I would kind of agree with it, because certain players won't be going with their countries, other players will be. So yes, I do agree with that to a certain degree, that can be a blessing for United. And Jim James says here rightly, like, we've had great centre back pairings in terms of Bruce Pallister, Rio Vidic, who's our best two now. I'd say Lindelof and Varane. I think Lindelof and Varane would be our best partnership at this moment in time. I think we've seen that in the last couple of games, that there's a bit more of a balance there with them two there. There seems to be more communication. They seem to be on the same wavelength. Now, obviously, Lindelof, obviously, because of what happened, is going to be out tomorrow. So it'll be interesting to see who Ralf Rangnick starts. Does he bring Harry Maguire back into the fold, or does Phil Jones get a start? Because for me, Phil Jones played very well alongside Raphael Varane, looked like a better suited partner to Raphael Varane than Harry Maguire is. So it'll be interesting to see what he does, because obviously Antonio will be up top tomorrow. And obviously you have the likes of Bowen and Ben Rama kind of in and around that position, Vlasic as well. Like, does Maguire play in this game? Is this a type of game for Harry Maguire? We'll wait and see. And Wayne is also here in the house. Wayne says, evening, lads. And Reese also agrees as well and says Varane and Lindelof would be our best two centre halves. Just unlucky he's not available. Would you agree with that, Phil, with Reese, that Varane and Lindelof is our best partnership? Or do you think, can Harry Maguire kind of break himself back in and get back into being that kind of, I suppose, part of the centre-back partnership?
Yeah, most definitely. I agree with Reese. I think, going off what I've seen this season, most definitely Lindelof and Varane have been the best two centre-backs at the club. I do obviously think Maguire's, been well below par for whatever reason. We all know he's probably a lot better than what he has shown. But for me, I actually still think that, a fully firing Harry Maguire and Varane and Lindelof, I'd still prefer Lindelof and Varane. I just think Maguire's got too many mistakes in him, and he's not got the pace for me that you need as a centre back in the Premier League. I think Antonio is a handful at the best of times for any centre backs, and for me tomorrow, I think he'd be rubbing his hands if Harry Maguire was playing. He's obviously not played for a few games, so he's not going to be obviously fully match fit. And he definitely fancying him in a foot race against him. So I think he would be looking at that and sort of thinking, yeah, that's somebody I'm hoping to play in tomorrow, because he is susceptible. He's not the quickest, and he's okay on the ball for me. He's not bad, but when you look at all the top centre halves, and
you have a bit of everything.
You compare that they're a lot better in all aspects than Maguire. So. Yeah, I do actually think he will be picked tomorrow, though. Obviously, Lindelof's out. I think Maguire will get the nod ahead of Phil Jones. That's just being the price tag and being the captain. I think he's going to pick Maguire. I don't think that'd go down well if Phil Jones was playing ahead of him. But I guess we just have to wait and see on that one. But if I'm Mikel Antonio, I'm thinking, obviously I don't want to go against Varane as much as I'd be wanting to go and get isolated against Maguire, because I think if he gets one-on-one against him, then he's got the beating of him, and obviously with him not playing again, he's not going to be fully up to speed. So that could be one to sort of watch and something that we maybe need to get someone to screen in front of Antonio, McTominay or Fred maybe to help out in that regard, because he is dangerous.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's definitely one thing they can maybe do is if whoever's the sitter tomorrow needs to like maybe slot in between two centre halves, kind of similar to what Michael Carrick used to do and screen the back four. You're absolutely right. One thing about Maguire with his struggles, I think one thing I would say is, and it's chalk and cheese as to what like his setup with Leicester was compared to what it was at United. Because at Leicester he sat in the 18 with Johnny Evans. Two of them would just sit there, and that'd be it. So like they'd sit in the 18, you'd have Ndidi and I think it was Tielemans sitting in front of the two of them then. So Harry Maguire had protection at Leicester, whereas at United he's expected to be on that 18-yard line. Do you know what I mean? Besides his centre back partner, I think that's where he's getting exposed. So yeah, like I think maybe this tactical setup doesn't suit him. Like again, if he's defending balls in the air and sitting on the 18-yard line and playing hero ball, then 100%. Like, look, he's great at that. Like Harry Maguire is great at that. But if you're playing a high line, you're expecting to control the game, and then like if you're come up against, let's say, a front two or a 4-3-3 that's pressing you really high, with that you're going to get caught. I think that's where Harry Maguire, you see them tendencies, and mistakes happen.
Just on that as well, I think obviously when you look at the likes of Liverpool and City with their fullbacks, the way they bomb forward, they're happy to just leave their centre backs isolated 1v1 because they can trust them and they know that 9 times out of 10 that the centre forward's not going to run in behind or they're not going to beat them 1v1 because they're totally confident that they're good enough to deal with that. And I feel as though if we was looking at trying to play in that way and our fullbacks were getting forward, we are very susceptible on the counter attack to teams being able to just cut through us, and then if it is left to Maguire to defend in a 1v1 situation against the likes of an Antonio or somebody else who's got a bit of pace, then it doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence that he's going to be able to deal with that more times than not. Varane, I have no doubts he would be somebody who's quite intimidating. As a striker, one-on-one against that Varane is a different scenario to a one-on-one with Maguire. So I just feel as though that's where we're at a little bit at the moment with Maguire. I think he's obviously a lot of players and a lot of other teams. For me, I think their team talk when he's playing will be we need to get at him and play on him, and because he seems to be our weak link really this season in terms of what we've seen so far, and I think the proof's been in the pudding. He's not been nowhere near good enough for playing for Manchester United.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think, look, again, it's going to be a struggle for him because I think whoever new manager is may look for another centre back. I think in the summer, I think that's definitely, one area the new manager may look at, because if they want to play possession football and as I said, they want to play in the halfway line and leave the fullbacks push up, Harry Maguire won't be that type of centre back. Now, if you're sitting, as I said, if you're sitting on that 18, he's perfect. If you're playing to play a high line and you want to keep possession, and if you want to, be confident to leaving, like let's say Dalot and Telles go forward, you're going to need two competent centre backs, not one, because more often than not, that one centre back then gets caught. So yeah, absolutely, 100%. Phil, obviously West Ham tomorrow, huge game in the Premier League, obviously 6-pointer really. Obviously Spurs and Chelsea are playing that other game, which kind of makes this game massive for us, that we need to pick up 3 points. David Moyes seems to have them really well organised. They're doing well in Europe, they're doing well domestically in the league, they're still in the FA Cup. Just in terms of West Ham this season, how impressed have you been with West Ham?
Yeah, very. I mean, they've got a lot of good players. We've just touched on Antonio. I think he's somebody who's underrated. He'll score 10, 15 goals every season. But his work rate and his power, and he's always a threat. I think he's probably one of their best players. But a lot of the players who probably weren't doing a lot up until recently have come to the fore now. I think like Ben Rama, people like that. Jared Bowen. He's obviously started scoring goals a lot more than he used to, and he's always been a good player. But I think that them kind of players now are hitting some real good form. So yeah, the dangerous going forward. Obviously Declan Rice, probably one of the best in the league in that position. He's somebody now who's, he doesn't just sit there and pass sideways. He can get forward. He's scored quite a few goals this year. His distribution, he can break the lines. So he's got a little bit of everything. So he's going to be dangerous. And again, they've got, decent fullbacks and two big centre halves who aren't afraid to, put their head on things. So David Moyes has got them well drilled. I think that's the big key word with them. The team pretty much picks itself with them. You don't really see much sort of chopping and changing from West Ham unless it's absolutely necessary. So again, you can see that they're all knowing the jobs. Cresswell, he's got a good relationship with his winger. Kufal or whoever, he's got that relationship as well. And they're just a solid team, but obviously a lot of the players have started hitting a lot better form than they probably have done in recent seasons. So that's obviously why the results have been a lot better. Going to be a difficult game. They're always a tough side. I think David Moyes obviously going to want to come back and prove a point that he's a good manager, which we know he is. He didn't obviously work out for him at United, but that's always something that's going to be in the back of any manager's mind who comes back to a club. So he's obviously going to want to come and get a result. So yeah, it's going to be a difficult game. Again, we need to make sure that we're at it from the start of the game to the 90th minute and beyond. So it's going to be a very tough game. I think this will be a real test now of where we're at. Obviously, Villa and Brentford have been tough games in the last couple of weeks, but I think West Ham is a slight step up from them to obviously see exactly where we are as a team. So yeah, it's going to be a tough ask.
It's going to be a tough game, and I think, look, for me, I'm looking at like their midfield is very strong, and they're great at winning second balls. Rice and Soucek in midfield are very formidable, and then obviously Kufal at right back, he's a very good player. Jarrett Bowen for me has really impressed me in these last couple of weeks. He's really morphed into a very good player, and someone I think when you look at the England squad, I think he might be close enough in the next international break. I think he may be someone who will do quite well. But for me, I think Declan Rice for me has been probably their most impressive player this season in terms of the best holding midfield player in the league. I think that's what he's been. He was great last season. He's obviously become leaps and bounds even again this year. And just overall, the way Moyes has them organised, and they're very good on the counter attack, and they're very resolute. So yeah, like, and even you look at other players like Ben Rama is a very good player, and they've Vlasic, like they've a very good blend of players. And if you look at kind of the way, like I fancied them to get relegated last year. It was mad because Moyes came in and Moyes had to get relegated with Sunderland. And I remember I was on a podcast last year and I was like, geez, when I made my Premier League predictions, I was like, West Ham will probably go down. Moyes seems to be finished, but he's really rejuvenated himself in the last kind of 12 to 18 months. And fair play to him, because I think David Moyes, for a multitude of reasons, I think his time at Manchester United didn't work out. Now, obviously, you can put that down to a lot of things. First of all, the board didn't back him when he came in. He got none of his first choice targets. Then he got Matt and Fellaini, who for the large part weren't, his number one targets. And then you have to look, obviously, he had an Asian squad. He had, he probably rubbed up kind of some of them players in the wrong way with how we approached it. I think maybe him getting rid of the coach, Ferguson's coaching staff at the time, probably hindered him as well. Like, I know he probably wants to come in and make his own stamp, but he probably shouldn't have done that. But look, there's a multitude of reasons why, his Manchester United career as a manager didn't work out, but he's after rejuvenating himself. And like, if David Moyes wasn't a Manchester United manager previously, and we're talking about Ralf Rangnick, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's successor, he'd be in the frame if he wasn't a former Manchester United manager right now, because of what he's done, the West Ham, and how he's propelled them to a top four challenging team. Because that 18 months ago, people were tipping him for relegation, including myself. So, like, yeah. I look at David Moyes now and I'm like, fair play to me. He's done a good job. I have massive respect for him for what he's done in the game. But that respect goes out the window tomorrow, obviously, for them 90 minutes, of course. Obviously, one player was done fantastically well there, Phil, at West Ham last year was Jesse Lingard on loan. Obviously, we've rejected a loan deal for Jesse Lingard to go to Newcastle United. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think, obviously, for me, I think he is a player who's going to probably leave, whether it be, at the end of the season or, in the coming seasons. I think he doesn't play enough football, and obviously when he did go to West Ham, he sort of, was a breath of fresh air. He did fantastic for them, and I was really surprised actually that he didn't actually make that move permanent when he had the opportunity, because he, as a footballer, the only way you can sort of hit your top form and be a consistent performer is by playing regular football, and I don't think that's ever going to happen now at Manchester United with the players we've got in them positions ahead of him. I think he's going to need to move elsewhere to sort of get that run of games and a real sort of consistent starts that he's going to need to be the player he is. I think he's a great player, and I think we have sort of missed opportunities and not maybe played him in some of the games where he would have been probably a lot more effective than some of the other players. But yeah, for me, I can understand why they've not let him go on loan to Newcastle, because a few injuries and stuff, and you're scraping around for players. But in terms of for his personal, he's himself. He needs to be going playing football. So yeah, he's probably going to be frustrated because he's not going to play every game for United till the end of the season. So he's probably looking at it as a way of getting his match fitness up, maybe getting back into the England setup and seeing where that takes him. But again, from a United perspective, if we do get a couple of injuries and suspensions, then he could be somebody.
We have a couple of injuries at the moment, so I think I think that's why United are probably hesitant to even go right now, because Ronaldo's injured, Cavani's having problems. Obviously, that means we're going to have to move Mason into the middle. We're going to have to move Martial into the team. I think that's maybe why United are probably a bit pessimistic to maybe even go right now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's exactly why. I mean, they're probably a little bit got one eye on who's fit and injuries and all that kind of thing. And if he did go, then you're going to be a little bit light if there's all these injuries. So I think that's probably why they're sort of keeping that one closed at this moment in time. For me, if you give him a run of games and you get him up to speed like he was at West Ham, he's the kind of player that we're missing at the moment. Somebody who can score goals, unlock defenses, drive forward, got energy, can get all over the pitch. But again, because he's not played for so long, if you start him, it's going to maybe take him, at least 3 or 4 games to sort of get to anywhere near that level what he was at West Ham. So it's a difficult one, really. But yeah, I hope he can get, whatever happens, and he can get playing regular football, because I do like the lad, and I think he's a really good player, and he's wasted to just be, sitting on a bench at United and not really playing any football. So
yeah, I think he's definitely in the frame to play a couple of games, Phil, and I think even if he doesn't leave now, by the end of the season, he's gonna have a new club. He'll be ready to go in the summer. Now, my only fear about you mentioned England is we have a Winter World Cup. Well, I'm not English, but the Winter World Cup is coming up. Wherever he moves to, he's gonna have to hit that West Ham form straight away. He's gonna have to hit the ground running straight away if he stays at United this season. So, I hope for him if he does move that he hits the ground running straight away wherever he goes. Hopefully abroad, because then that means he's not scoring goals against United in the Premier League next season. But moving on to West Ham tomorrow, Phil, obviously in terms of your starting 11 prediction, because there's a lot of obviously players either doubts or injury, suspension, stuff like that. Usually it's easy enough to pick the starting 11, but this week's slightly a bit more complex. Give me your starting 11 and formation for tomorrow.
Yeah, so I actually believe he'll start with the same team that he started with against Brentford. Other than obviously we know Lindelof's not going to be playing, and obviously Ronaldo's potentially not going to be playing. So for me, it'd be De Gea in net, Dalot, Varane, Maguire. I think Maguire will come back in, just because. Although I think Phil Jones did really well in that game, I just think that Maguire being the captain and the price tag and all that kind of thing, he's not going to sort of put Phil Jones in ahead of him. I think that'd just be an absolute nail in the coffin for him, confidence-wise as well. Obviously, a player who's been out for so long and getting picked ahead of the captain. So, yeah, I think Maguire will come in, Tellez, and then I think it'll be the same midfield. I think it'd be Fred, McTominay, Bruno, and then Greenwood, Alanga, and I think obviously if Ronaldo's going to be out, it'll probably be Cavani who starts down the middle up top, if he's fully fit. So yeah, that'd be my starting team for the game.
I have the exact same team as you in terms of formation, the 4-3-3 again. Same back four, even though I think Jones should start, but it's going to be Maguire. The only thing I have different is Cavani was obviously nursing an injury. Ronaldo's a doubt, but he might play. But in the event Ronaldo is a doubt, I don't think either him or Cavani's going to play. I think Martial will start tomorrow because he was in the squad the other night, and I think he'd go Greenwood, Martial, Alanga as the front three. Or
the only thing he could do maybe is obviously if Greenwood plays
Rashford.
down the middle, yeah, and then Rashford comes in on the wide area. So again, it depends obviously on fitness and if people are available or whatever. But yeah, if Cavani's fully fit or if he's available to start, then I think he'll start. But if not, obviously it could be Martial, as you said, or I think he could maybe put Greenwood down the middle and play maybe Rashford on the
right, yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah. I forgot Marcus. Yeah, so it probably will be Marcus probably on the right, Greenwood up top.
He scored as well, didn't he? So when players come on and make an impact and score,
it's a bit of confidence for him. Like
as a manager, you want to sort of show that little bit of sort of trust and reward him with maybe a start. I mean, he might not. It depends on who's fit and stuff, but that could be something that gives Marcus a bit more confidence. He's come on and made an impact in the game. He scored a goal, and the manager's rewarded him with a start. So, these little things and these little details sometimes you take for granted, but as a player, sometimes that can be the difference in, him sitting on the bench for another couple of games, not playing, losing his match fitness, confidence is going, and then if he starts and does well against West Ham, that could kickstart his season again, and he could be flying. So hopefully it's the latter, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, he's been stop-start this season. So look, hopefully this Brentford goal against Brentford is the catalyst for him, to really push on and drive on for the rest of the season. Because if we have a fully fit and firing Marcus Rashford, that's great for our top four charge this season and in Europe as well. One final question for you, Phil, just before we wrap up tonight. Obviously, Bruno Fernandes has dropped back into a number 8/number 10 position in these last 2 weeks in the 4-3-3. Obviously, he's had 2 goals and 2 assists. Do we think Bruno Fernandes is back to his best? And do you maybe think this new formation is probably the best for him going forward?
Well, he's definitely shown glimpses of it, hasn't he? He's been, really good in the last couple of games. Obviously, got 2 goals against Villa. So, that's something that we've sort of come to expect now from Bruno. He's somebody who can, pop up with a goal. He makes them runs beyond the strikers, which he did for the goal against Villa, where he got into the box and it was a great finish. And then also for the Greenwood goal the other day against Brentford, he's noticed the ball's going into the front man, and he's made that run into the space. It was a great chested pass from Ronaldo. But then obviously showing the composure, which sometimes he lacks, or he maybe does some of the harder things really well, and then sometimes you see him do stuff and you think like, what are you doing? But yeah, made that run into the space, obviously got into the box and made a really good decision in terms of squaring it for Greenwood. Some people maybe would have shot there, but obviously that's a very unselfish thing to do. So yeah, I actually feel as though he's been probably, finding. I don't think he's fully back to maybe where he was at the start of the season, or in his peak at United. But I think he's slowly getting there, and I think he's shown a lot of positive signs in the last couple of games. He can still be a little bit wasteful at times with some of the passing, which, I mean, I'd never knock anybody for trying to play, balls forward or to try and create a chance or whatever. But I just feel as though with Bruno, sometimes he over sort of looks for them balls, and obviously you're going to make them kind of passes maybe 1 in 20, 1 in 30 times. So sometimes maybe just keep the ball moving and wait for a better opportunity maybe to play forward. But again, I wouldn't criticise that, and I wouldn't want to take that side of the game away from him, because he obviously has set up a large portion of our goals, and he has got that kind of pass in his locker. It's just obviously a difficult thing to do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So but on the whole, he's definitely showing signs of improvement and getting back to the levels that we know he can. So long may that continue, and hopefully he can carry that on tomorrow and maybe get another goal or assist to help us get 3 points.
Yeah, I think one thing I've noticed since he's kind of dropped into an 8 role, he's been a bit more disciplined defensively. He's really kind of chipped in with tracking back and helping us get up the pitch. And I think he's getting a bit more disciplined. But also and Wayne makes a very good point. Like, you want a player who takes gambles, but sometimes he's a bit too rash. Like, to be fair, look, one of the reasons why I'm never tough on Bruno when it comes to this is because, yes, you want a player who takes gambles, but also before we had Bruno, we did not have a player who did take a gamble at all. And every time we attacked, it was all sideways. And I was hoping that Rashford would take a shot early and score. That's the way it used to be. Yeah. So for me, Bruno coming into this side, yes, he's that injection. But all I'll say about with Bruno is wait till Pogba comes back into the team. He won't be trying these 40-yard passes because you have someone else there who will be able to help knit the play and link up. Like Bruno, when him and Pogba played in that midfield three, and with Matic in there as well, Bruno was never like that in terms of looking for that pass every single time, because you had Pogba there who would also be that creative outlet. Like, I think the problem with Bruno in these last 2 months is, 2-3 months since Pogba's been out, is he's that only creative midfield player in that midfield that has it in his locker to play these passes. I think that's where, we haven't seen the best of him.
I think a good thing as well is, obviously, as a centre forward, obviously I play up front, and I always feel as though if you've got somebody who can, pick a pass and who can see the movement and will not shy away from, trying them kind of passes, it helps you as a striker because you can make them runs, and he's going to look for you and he's going to try that pass. The only downside on that is sometimes I think with Bruno, sometimes when a striker does make that run, that's taking defenders away and then maybe opening up space for somebody else to maybe run into. If you maybe get a couple more passes in, or be a little bit more patient, then there's other options that he could maybe use instead of just trying to get that killer pass every single time. But again, as I said, I wouldn't try and take that part of his game away, because I think that's what makes him such a good player. And as I said, he has got them passes in his locker, and he's got a great range of passing. So just hopefully he can just start polishing that up and just being a bit more sort of savvy and noticing when, obviously, sometimes as a player, like I've been there myself, and you see someone make a run and the likelihood of getting that pass into the space as they're running is 1 in 100 sometimes, even, because it's such a pinpoint pass you've got to do. So that's maybe the noticing and recognizing when and where to maybe play them passes, and maybe to just keep it a little bit more simpler sometimes, and wait for a better opportunity, and percentages really, just to sort of keep the ball a little bit more, because I think that's where we struggle sometimes, the turnover of possession. Obviously losing balls from long balls and then getting broke on the counter attack, or just needless passes, really getting sloppy on the ball, not really any pressure on, and just giving the ball away unnecessarily. And that's an opportunity then to keep the ball moving, tire the opposition out, wait for that gap to appear, and then go with some real purpose, and sort of that's obviously what you see a lot of the best teams do. So we need to try and get a little bit better at that, really, moving forward.
Yeah, I think this is where, look, again, I think the system will help that. I think the 4-3-3, having another box-to-box midfielder beside him, will help him. I think he'll be more disciplined because of his position. And again, with Ralf, the coaching, I think, will help him. And again, as I said, when Pogba comes into the team, all them little things, he won't have to do all these Hollywood passes every single time. He will have that. He will have that extra player there. And also when Sancho is there, Sancho is also another creative outlet that he can play the 1-2s with, more kind of intricate passing with regards to that. But Phil, we're just at the end of the podcast there now. It's been a fantastic 55 minutes. Great insight as always from yourself. Can I just get your score prediction for tomorrow's game?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good game tomorrow. I think there's going to be quite a lot of goals for some reason. So I'm going to go for a 3-2 win. I actually think as well that we're going to see an unusual first goal scorer. I think I'm going to go for Varane off a set piece, just as something totally out of the blue, because I think we've not scored off a set piece all year.
We haven't scored in the 100. We've had 107 corners this season, and we haven't scored.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna. I mean, I'm just gonna throw it out there and hope that something might, someone might hear me out there and hope that we can score off a set piece. So
Manifesting positivity.
yeah, and that's it. I'm visioning it, so I may as well go with it. So yeah, I'm gonna go for 3-2. I think there's gonna be quite an open game. Obviously, West Ham are quite good on the counter attack, and for me, I think David Moyes has got like them playing to the strengths. They've got quite a lot of sort of variation in the play. They've got big physical players who can win headers like Souček, Antonio, the two centre halves. So they're good off set pieces and they're a threat. But also they've got players who can beat a man, like Ben Rama, Lanzini, Bowen, Antonio. So going forward, they're going to be a threat, and I just think it's going to be a quite open game. But I'm hoping that we can just edge it and get the win 3-2.
I'm gonna go 1-0 United. I'm gonna go 1-0 United, and I'm gonna go McTominay to score the goal. In that regard, it's gonna be a cagey affair, but McTominay get a goal because he got 2 against West Ham last season in the cup and in the league. So I'm gonna go McTominay again, and McTominay will be man of the match and be that more consistent performer under Ralf Rangnick. And again, some of the doubters will be silenced once again. But thanks very much to everyone for watching today. Thanks very much for the comments. They've been absolutely fantastic. Reese has gone 3-2 United, and looks like you and Reese are on the same wavelength. And Reese has also said 2-1 win is my guess. So yeah, look, there's a lot of positivity and a lot of 3 points for Manchester United tomorrow. But thanks very much, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back next Friday, and we'll be reviewing the game and obviously talking all the latest news, transfer news, and the lot. But until then, guys, thanks very much for watching, and we'll be back next week.